Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022. This is a Charter and Rules Committee meeting. Jeffrey, are we all set? Yes, we are. With us today, we have committee member Councilor Murphy Ramboletti and then committee member President Todd McGee. In the Zoom, we have Councilor Will Puello and we also have Councilor Israel Rivera. So just to go real quick before we take up anything, just to talk about the agenda, essentially took every single item that was in the jacket and put it onto this agenda. Some of these, so the expectation is just to have a quick discussion on them. I know our administrative assistant, Jeffrey, actually gave us notes as to what is the status of all of these items on here. So the expectation is not necessarily to take up every single one and have a full discussion, but just to get out of the jacket and really start this legislative year on a cleaner note. I just also wanted to announce that Councilor Anderson Burgos just joined us on Zoom as well. So I'd like to entertain a motion to take up item 1. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so item 1 was by former Councilor Sullivan back in 2018 that the DPW Commissioner and Sewer Commissioners meet with the Council to discuss merger of elimination of Sewer Commissioner and the sewer deficit. It has been tabled a couple times. On the notes that Jeffrey sent over, pretty much after all it says is follow up from law department, a new order is definitely needed, and she suggested that this should be revisited after a new DPW superintendent has been hired. So I would say with this motion to leave to withdraw.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So item 1, leave to withdraw. Perfect. See, that was so quick. Less than a minute.
Great.
Number 1.
Killing it.
Okay. Next item. Take up item 2. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 2 is by Councilor McGee. Order that the City Council administrative assistant appointment be a 2-year appointment that coincides with the City Council terms. This was an order that was put in January of last year, and the notes, it pretty much says that we're waiting for the next council, which is us, to really take up this matter. So I know McGee is the order of the maker, so if you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, if you look at the vast majority of the people that we appoint, they're either 2 or plus more. I think there's like 1 or 2 others that are year appointments. I filed this because, well, basically it is like a 2-year term because it's with the council, and then whether a new council comes in or same council, it would just roll over. So do it yearly just really hasn't made sense to me, and the arguments that were there still don't make sense to me. So I refiled it. This is probably the 3rd time I've done it, so hopefully we can approve this to allow our city admin to have some type of understanding that, they're going to be here, they're going to work for 2 years, and then whatever happens going forward, that's up to a new council.
Yeah. I'll make a
Councilor
motion
Murphy?
to approve this order.
Motion is to approve this order. Any second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So we'll recommend that we change the administrative assistant appointment to a 2-year appointment. Entertain a motion to take up item 3, 4, and 16 together.
3, 4, and 16,
Suspend the rules, take up as a package. 3, 4, and 16. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So these orders, 3 and 4 are the same order. Former Councilor Lisi actually did it in March and then did it again in June. But it was that the City Council vote to place the following question on the ballot as a binding referendum. Should the city treasurer be changed from an elected position to an appointed position that combines the duties of treasurer and tax collector? And that is the same language as item 4. And then item 16 is that the City Council review and vote on whether the city clerk should be appointed as opposed to elected. The reason why I want to take these up together as a package is because they both have to do with what's going into the ballot, a question that's going into the ballot. And I don't believe that we should, I mean, we'll go how the committee goes, but we should actually vote on this today without any sort of input from the city clerk
Uh,
or the treasurer as well. So I would entertain a motion to table this for the next meeting when we can have some input from the city clerk and treasurer and mayor around changing these. Or
I'll second.
go ahead. Discussion.
Microphone, Councillor McGee.
Oh,
On 3 and 4, I filed this before, something that should be looked at. On 16, I'll abstain. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
if I may,
Go ahead, Councilor Murphy-Rambelotti.
the only issue I see with putting these together is that the order from Councilor Bartley, item number 16 on the agenda, only references the city clerk. And so to contrast, Councilor Lisi, items 3 and 4 mention the treasurer as one of those as well. And so I agree that we should table this because I think we should give the opportunity for our city clerk to be present. But I also think it's worth discussing our city treasurer as well. And so I'd like the opportunity to invite our city treasurer, Katie Jakowski.
Okay. I just want to announce that Councilor Bacon has joined us in the chambers.
Hello, thank you.
Anyone else, any discussion on 3, 4, 16 items? Seeing none. So right now it seems like the motion is to table these 3 and invite all invite the city treasurer and the city clerk and the mayor to discuss this order.
I mean, technically, if we're going through the jacket, I guess you could give item 3 their leave to withdraw because
Okay.
it's essentially the same. And if I'm not mistaken, Councilor Lisi refiled item
Mention.
4.
It's the same thing. Mhm.
So it's the same thing essentially.
So we can go item by item. So entertaining motion for item 3 to leave for withdrawal.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Entertain a motion to table item 4 with the hopes of inviting the
Motion to
treasurer.
table 4.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. And then motion to table item 16. All,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Say any opposed? Okay, so perfect. Motion to take up item 5 off the table.
Take up item 5.
Here a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 5 reads, order that this, it's a order by former Councilor Murphy, order that the city charter be amended so that if there is a vacancy in the mayor's office and the president of the city council cannot assume the duties full-time, the full council would then select another councilor to assume the role of acting mayor by majority vote of the council. The acting mayor would still continue to represent their constituents as a councilor. This was tabled back in April. Any discussion? Tercy,
It's okay,
Tercy
Tessa,
Murphy-Rambelotti.
same thing. You've
Councilor
known me
Murphy
for
Rambelotti.
12 years, it's fine. I just want to recognize the notes that we have on this order. It looks like there was some interest moving forward. Follow-up was needed. We, as a council, not me, because I wasn't here, but there was a discussion about the possibility of creating a vice president role, which will probably coincide with some of the suggestions that you may have from other city councils in the state. There are other city councils that have a vice president. So we still clearly need to research this a bit. There was also a request that the law department offer some guidance on the next steps necessary. I don't expect the law department to talk about this evening, so I would make a motion to table this.
Second.
Motion to table second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, so this motion is, item 5 will be tabled. Okay. Motion to take up items 6, 8, and 13. Suspend the rules and take up 6, 8, and 13 together as a
Take 'em up
package.
as a package? Second.
Second. Any all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So 6, 8, and 13 are item 6 is by Councilor Anderson Burgos, order that Rule 38 be amended by striking out a 2/3 supermajority and replacing it with a majority of all eligible members. 8 is Anderson Burgos, 12/21/21, ordered that a new rule be created stating that for the purpose of determining voting majorities and supermajorities at full city council meetings, eligible voting members shall mean the full body of the city council, except any members that may have properly abstained from participating in debate for a vote. In addition, in any rules referring to the full membership of the city council, to state eligible members of the city council, these locations are Rule 35 and 36. And then 13 is order that we change our rules to pass ordinances other than zone changes by a simple majority. So the notes that we have on 6 and 8, these are items that were discussed in the last meeting. And pretty much we're just waiting to hear from the law department around can we make this change? So I'm not sure. I have not received any communication from the law department around this. I'm not sure if Attorney Mike Bezanet has any information on 6, 8, and 13.
Good evening.
Hello, Attorney Bezanet.
Hello.
So we have the, do you know, sorry, are you following? Do you know, I guess, what my question is?
The council can change its own rules
Okay.
to allow for a 2/3 vote or a majority vote for approval, as long as it does not conflict with any of the Chapter 43 state law requirements for the passage of ordinances. Those are usually related to zoning. So almost every other ordinance you could do by majority vote. The ones with zoning may have prohibitions and require 2/3.
Okay. Any discussion?
Juan raised his hand. Oh, and Linda.
I'm going to recognize Councilor Anderson Burgos just as the maker of the order, and then Councilor Reagan. Go ahead, and Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my advice is to table just because we still haven't heard from Attorney Ball, and that's who we were waiting to hear back from in regards to item 6 and item 8. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson Burgos. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So I'm here because I would like to speak against changing our rules relative to item 6 and item 8. I look forward to the feedback from our legal department relative to item 8, which I think is problematic. And relative to item 6 with the 2/3 supermajority, many of the ordinances that we pass are very non-controversial, such as traffic, etc. And so I see no harm in having a supermajority vote to change a law. So flip that argument around and say that a matter is controversial. It seems to me that part of the role of serving the public and having public debate is to try to take two sides of a matter, air the differences, and hopefully come to some reasonable result. I am of the belief that if we utilize a supermajority rule, that moves us more in that direction than if we change our rule to a simple majority. So that is my general philosophical position relative to it. I could probably come up with some other arguments, but that's pretty much my main one. So I thank you for considering my perspective.
Thank you, Councilor Reagan. Councilor Puello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to start off by saying I love Councilor Burgos. I think he's great. He's awesome. But this specific ordinance in 6 and 8, I don't think I would be able to support. I think at the end of the day, it just really kind of limits representation a little bit. Like, if there's a conflict of interest, maybe that should be made clear during the campaign or during the election, and maybe the voters should know about it, and you know, that should affect whether or not they either choose to support that person or not. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know, I feel like it maybe limits representation a little bit. Every single voter's counselor should have a say in a situation, and if for whatever reason they have to abstain from that, then, you know, I think that needs to be made clear to the voters when we're in campaign season. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Puello. Anyone else? So I would just like to put in my 2 cents real quick, because I know when Councilor Anderson Burgos filed this in December, we weren't on here yet, but I was at the mic telling Councilor Burgos that I would have co-signed with it. I do, you know, think Councilor Bacon has a point. I'm of a belief that a simple majority is to pass certain laws and get the people. Passing things at simple majority doesn't really encompass all of the people, but I do believe that 2/3 is a high number to get to, and that's what's stopping us from making a lot of the required changes in our city. So, you know, I agree that we should table this, but I'm open to discussion. You know, maybe not 2/3, maybe 3/5, maybe changing it so that the threshold is a little lower and make it more democratic in the process. But I do believe that we don't have the information needed to really vote on this tonight. So, Attorney Bissonnette, you have your hands raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to clarify, we're still in the law department looking at the issue of how to count or not count members who abstain on a required 2/3 or majority vote. The issue generally has been stated in the courts that an abstention counts as a vote. So you would still need 9, even if a member or 2 abstain. So we're looking for more guidance from the Supreme Court on some past municipal cases on this, but we want to be clear about what happens if someone has to abstain for any reason. So I think that's the reason we haven't gotten the written opinion about the majority rule being acceptable. We're still hung up on the abstention argument. I just wanted to make that clear because I heard Councilor Puello just raise that, and I think that's a great point to consider the impact of the abstentions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Bissonnette. Any other discussion? Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
And why do I feel like someone was raising their hand on there? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, Attorney Bissonnette popped
Yeah,
up.
it is.
Oh,
Yeah, 'cause
okay.
It's like double.
Just want to make sure. No, I definitely agree with continuing to table this. One thing that I am interested in learning about, just in my research, is that the rule that we have it now sometimes applies to state law. There are certain things within state law that need this amount of votes. But I am curious to see how other municipalities with a body in the city council that is as large as ours, you know, that's a very unique thing about Holyoke. We used to be 15 members, and then we recently became 13 members, but that's still a significant amount of councilors. So I'm definitely curious to see how we compare to municipalities that have a similar body size as ours. Perhaps it's Boston, Springfield. I don't know what that is, but I think that just echoes the need to continue to table this.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy, Ramboletti, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. The only comment I'd like to offer relative to abstentions is that certainly there are legitimate circumstances under which a person must abstain, and we're all taking that course. But it is the duty of counselors to vote unless they are in that particular circumstance. So I would just note that in most cases, counselors should be voting. Thank you.
Thank you,
And
Councilor Bacon.
To
And
clarify,
go ahead, Councilor Murphy, Ramboletti.
I actually really respect this point you're bringing up. To clarify, maybe you don't know this answer, but is the difference between being there to vote and abstaining, like, for example, if one of us leaves or is not here for like an unexcused absence or like whatever, is that what you mean? I'm just
That-
curious.
No, all I was just trying to emphasize a little bit is that in general, there is a duty to vote.
Right.
We've seen people from time to time leave the room and miss a vote. But generally, there is a duty to vote.
Got it. As a new counselor, I appreciate
Right,
that. Yeah.
right. Now,
Yeah.
if somebody is absent, I mean, they just missed the meeting.
Right.
From the purpose of counting a vote, they
Yeah.
end up being a no because they can't be a yes.
Right. Okay.
You know what I mean? If they're just not present,
Right. Okay. That makes
right?
sense.
Right, but it's by default, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I just want to announce Counselor Kevin Jordan and Counselor Jenny Rivera both joined us on Zoom as well. Thank you for being here. So I'd like to entertain a motion to table items 6,
Motion
8, and
to
13.
table.
Motion to table. Do a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Perfect. Table 6, 8, and 13. Everything. Motion to take up item 7.
Move from the table item 7.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 7 is. Item 7 is item that Councilor Anderson Burgos put in back in December. Order that Rule 61 be amended by inserting or at the next meeting of the committee, whichever comes later, after the words 30 days. I believe the discussion from back then was that Tessa's order, Councilor Murphy Ramboletti's order around the 45 days. We were going to wait to see what happens with that.
Do we want to give that leave to withdraw for now, and then if we need to have Counselor Anderson Burgos refile, or?
Do we hear a motion to leave or withdraw item 7?
Yeah, make a motion to give leave to withdraw.
Okay. Any all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so item 7, leave to withdraw. Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Thank you for acknowledging me, Mr. Chair. So for future purpose, I'm just gonna state, I'm fine with the leave withdrawal, but I would refer, if I was a chair or a committee member, I would always refer to the maker of the order to see how they feel about the leave of withdrawal, just for future purposes, because like I said, I'm fine with it, but you never know. It's always good to check with the other counselor to make sure that they're fine with that.
My apologies, good sir.
For sure.
No,
Thank you.
no apologies needed. Just, we're all over.
Thank you, Anderson Burgos. Thank you,
you.
Councilor. Definitely heard that. I think, yeah, thank you. We'll definitely keep that in mind. Motion to take up item 9 off the table.
Move item 9.
So item 9 was an order by me. It was that we create a technology advisory board to advise the council on the impact and implications of technological innovations in our city. This was tabled last time. We still don't have enough information to do an ad hoc or anything. So do we want to table it? Motion to table.
Motion to table.
Motion to table, second.
Item 9.
Item 9. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Dang. Tabled. The next two are the last two together. So motion to take up item 10 and item 11 together as a
Second.
package. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 10 was order by me that the city council rules are reviewed, reorganized, and that titles are added for accessibility. And then item 11 were just 2 examples, one from Amherst, one from Boston, as to what that can look like. So I sent the city council rules to the committee, the updated ones. You all have it.
Yeah.
So essentially what ended up happening, there was no changes to the rules yet. It literally was reorganizing and just adding titles. So I just want to pull it up just so that everyone's aware as to what that looks like. Jeffrey, do you have can you share actually on screen the suggested changes that were sent?
Yeah, let me just get it opened up, and I should have it up for you in about 30 seconds.
All right, thank you. So while Jeffrey's getting that up, so some of the, off the top of my head, some of the titles or sections added were just first order of business, rules that the president needs to do, city clerk specific rules, procedure specific rules, what the agenda is supposed to be. There's another section with other. So like I mentioned, there were no changes to the actual language, that it was just reorganizing so that the rules that have to do with each other are in the same sort of area. So if we scroll down, so yeah, so first order of business, and then so it has number one, and then the old rule number, I guess, are on there. So starting off with the quorum, going into like Robert's rules, going into like the reading of the rules, and pretty much anything that needs to happen before we actually start. And then it goes into the meetings, talking about the meetings, what the meetings can look like, the times. Talks about roles of the president. So all these rules were rules that were already in the agenda, but if you notice the rule number, they were all over the place. So it was just organizing just to put them all sort of, more reading friendly. Goes from president, goes into, I believe city clerk is next. Yeah, and then after city clerk, it's a long one.
It's all good.
Procedure, so talking about all the different motions we're able to make.
We love it.
Yay, Robert. And then it goes into a section on voting. Decorum and speaking, actually. So we, as a council in the past, have put a lot of rules in our rules about decorum and speaking. I think there's like 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then, agenda. Cool. So I guess open for discussion on any of this. Go ahead, Councilor Murphy-Ramballetti.
So, thank you, Chair. I think this is great. I went through it, and it really makes, as far as the order of things and the categorizing of things, it really makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate all the work that you've done with this. Just a couple things. I mean, I think, I don't know the best way to do this, but for what it's worth, like, I think you can sort of, maybe there's a way to condense this so that you don't have to say Rule 23 or Rule 33, and it could just be in this new order. I feel like you're open to that. It's just more of like an organizational thing.
So I put in, just to answer that, so I put the rule, like, for example, 45, Rule 25, I just put that on there so that the councilors that review it can see that.
For the purposes of us all being able to review it, it's awesome.
Yeah, on there.
So I would just emphasize my support with eventually changing it to whatever order this has ended up in that everyone can agree on.
Sure.
The other thing is, there's not much else. I mean, I love the categorization. I think it's really helpful. There may be some ways that we can change the order in which things are presented, depending on what the council feels is most important for not only us to know, but the public to know. So the way that the categories are identified could probably change a little with other folks' input. But other than that, I mean, I just think for now, as we're getting to new rules, what you've done is super helpful. Just as someone who used to look through the rules for fun, I think this is a really great way to break down the different sections. So thank you for all that effort.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy-Ramballetti. Any other discussion? Councilor Puello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, these are all the same rules. No words have been changed. They've just been reorganized.
Yep, nothing at all. Nothing has changed at all as far as like the language itself. It's just being numbered. It's just ordered differently. That's all it is.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilor Kevin Jordan.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, nice job. I think you did a good job to put a lot of effort into kind of relooking at this. The only thing is, I just wanted to be said that the council is a long-standing institution. And we have honored a lot of our traditions and our histories. I just want you to understand how the rules, why these have been preserved in the format they've been preserved over the years, is since the city council, then Board of Aldermen, adopted the first set of rules on May 10th, 1897, had the original 42 rules, which today, by the way, are still in effect. The organization and structure that we've used over the years, the council for the last 125 plus years has preserved that structure. It wasn't that, there wasn't perhaps better ways to, make these titles and chapter sections and do all that. It's part of the history and tradition. Why does the United States Senate do various things that it does? This is one of the things that we have done, and the council over the last 125 years has maintained its current structure because of a reach out to history. And so I just want to point that out, because it was like, oh, well, the council has it in the current form because we're all disorganized, and I think the term hot mess was used. It's really not that. It's just that we're creatures of tradition in this institution. Historically, maybe that's all out the window, and I'm a dinosaur. That's fine. But as a general rule, that's what we've done, and that's the approach we've taken over the years. And we've honored those traditions. And I just wanted to be said that, yeah, there's always new ways, and maybe the next 125 years we'll do it the Maldonado Velez way, and that's not necessarily a wrong way. I'm just saying, that's how the rules, 1 through 66 have arrived in their current form. So I'm just pointing it out for history's sake.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan, for that. Appreciate the history information, definitely. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
Thank you. So I can totally appreciate where Councilor Jordan's coming from. Full disclosure, I was a history major in college, so I really do appreciate history. I think there is a way to balance both so that it's not necessarily one person's council rules necessarily, but really rules that the entire community can access and understand, because I'll tell you, as someone who used to watch city council meetings embarrassingly regularly as a citizen of Holyoke, it can be a little confusing as you're trying to follow along. So I do appreciate what Councilor Maldonado Velez has done in an effort to make things easy to access and understand. However, I also really do appreciate the rich history that comes from this. I mean, I'm only speaking for myself, but I figured there was a reason why they are in this order. And so I personally think, I'm just going to throw this out there as just an idea, but as a way to sort of still preserve the city's history and the city council's history and why all of these ordinances are here. Maybe it's either at the beginning of the rule or towards the end of the rule. We can even identify, I don't know if this is possible, I'm not making any promises, but if we could identify, like, when did this rule get approved? What mayor was it under? like some information like that for us to be able to really keep that history and understand that, but also at the same time knowing that as an organization, as a body, as a municipality, we do have to adapt with the times. And that's something I have learned very clearly on the parade committee. We often are like, well, we've always done it like this. I'm like, yeah, but let me just show you this other way. We can do a little bit of both. So for what it's worth, I just think it would be great. Obviously, that is an extra responsibility for us. We will probably have to tap into the minds and history of our council members that, you know, have this recollection, but I think both are really good points. It's time to update things, but it's always time to preserve the history that we have. So thank you for letting me speak on that.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti. Councilor Reagan?
Thanks. I would just note that I think the way that you organize them, keeping intact which rule is which, but just reorganizing the order of them does tend to preserve, because the way they were originally determined, their enumeration indicates their history, right? Because they're in order in time. So I kind of think the way that you have it right now
So I'm wondering,
tends, it preserves that aspect.
I'm wondering
Right.
if we,
It's just a thought.
thank you, Councilor Reagan. Wondering we change, so I think we all agree that the rules, the new suggested order is like helpful and like definitely needed, but to really honor the past of the council, maybe instead of putting the rule as listed at the beginning of the section, just put it at the end of the paragraph, like former rule, whatever. As of right now, as we start discussing something like sort of like Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti, how do we actually either as an amendment or like something to the council rules that say this is a history of all these items. Yeah. You feel like? Cool. Any other discussion? Councilor Kevin Jordan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I like where you're going with this, and I like the way you've, divided out. Maybe that is a way of doing both. How about if we have it in those sections, but we just keep the rule numbers the same? There's nothing that says, Rule 38 has to become now Rule 4, right? I mean, that might take, especially some of us, time to rememorize all the new rules. But if we just reorder them by the sections like you've asked us to consider and to do, but we just keep the traditional rule numbers. Maybe that's
Right now?
That's what I was trying to say.
maybe that's an option. And I think that's, as opposed to going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then at the end of the section, this is former, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Or maybe you would say Rule 1, but formally Rule 34 or something. I don't know. But
I think for where I'm at right now, I think right now where as is, like with the numbers with the former rules, may sort of actually I kind of follow. As you were speaking, Councilor Jordan, like Tessa on the side was also sort of agreeing with you. So I think we sort of agreed, like we can for now keep the rule numbers just as we transition over until, because honestly, there is a question, like if we have to add rules to different sessions, if the whole numbers are 1 through 66, what does that mean for a session on president and all that stuff? So I think this is just a preliminary for now and just really talk about the different sections, after this. But I think for right now, I think the focus more was making sure that particularly us new counselors coming in and are able to really access the rules much easier without like seeing how all these rules really connect, because there is some connection. There's a reason why these rules were formed and created and put into place, and they all have sort of these connections. So do I hear a motion?
I just also wanted to give you guys a lot of credit too, because you're really the first new class of counselors that I've seen that have actually taken an interest in the rules. Traditionally, this is something that it's not until you're on the council for 6 or 8 years where you really start getting into this. So I just wanted to say, kudos to you for caring about this, because it's really important to the institution you serve on. And I really appreciate both of you and all the newer counselors for their interest in this.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Councilor McGivern? I'm sorry, Aaron.
Motion to table. And
Second.
it's going to be updated, right? And then we'll get a final version?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So motion is to table item 10 and 11. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, perfect. Everything else is single now. Motion to take up item 12 off the table.
Motion to move item 12.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 12 is order put in by Councilor Lisi that the City Council, in accordance with MGL Chapter 43, Section 43, submit the following question to the voters as a binding referendum. Shall this city allow the sale of marijuana products as those terms are defined in GLC 94G1 for consumption on the premises where sold? A summary of which appears below. The notes that we have on item 12 believe that consumption is not legal at the Massachusetts level yet. So we still would have to wait for Massachusetts to legalize on consumption. So
I would also just
go
add.
ahead, Councilor Murphy Rumbley.
I would also just add that although it's not legal yet, I think the why I do support this order is more that it demonstrates to the state that we are considering it one way or another. That is something that is important for those in power to see. So it doesn't necessarily have to be submitting the question to the voters. It could be us discussing it, and I'm not exactly sure. So there's part of me that feels like we should either table this, or perhaps someone who's on the council now could just file another order. And just, I do want to say for the record that I would like to keep this discussion going, just because either way, it makes a big difference if we are being proactive about it rather than waiting for the state, because the writing is pretty clear on the wall that the state will approve this eventually. So I think the sooner we can just start the discussion is better. So I guess that's really what I wanted to get across.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy Rumbley. We have Attorney Bissonnette with their hand raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just by way of information on the cannabis reform legislation that was released by the House and the Senate Ways and Means Committee. House has approved that reform bill. The Senate Ways and Means is supposed to take a vote on it and release it, and then it will go to the full Senate for a vote and to the governor's desk. The two main things critical to Hoyo: social consumption is going to be fixed. They too have Scrivener's errors in legislation. This one prevented any communities from hosting a plebiscite, a vote, referendum on whether or not to have social consumption. So that's held it up. Hoyo is one of the communities that applied to be a pilot project some 3 years ago. And they, along with Springfield, will be considered for any social consumption pilot programs. But that will go forward once this bill has been approved. I expect that no later than this summer. And the other part of it, of course, is the issue of what's known as impact fees, the 3% that the cities get from cannabis retail sales and for cultivation and manufacturing gross sales. Those impact fees are subject of some controversy. This bill will continue to allow 3% as a maximum. That will include all contributions of any kind, including charitable contributions. But the cities are going to be required to have these agreements approved by the Cannabis Control Commission rather than just acting as their own contracting agents. There will be some limits imposed by regulation, which are not included in the law, but will be developed by the CCC once they start looking at these. But frankly, it's a direct result of a mayor using the unilateral power to provide letters of non-recusal for these applicants and charging a fee. He will go to jail for that. But there's going to be some real changes, I think, in the industry and with this law that Holyoke may be affected by. And I know the mayor has been briefed on it, and he's up to speed. But when you're looking at potentially $4 million a year in these impact fees, that's a pretty big chunk of revenue. So everybody's monitoring it closely all across the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Attorney Bissonnette. Councilor Bacon.
Oh, I just wanted to briefly say, if we're going to be talking about consumption in the future, it can't be about the smoking part, or we're going to be in conflict with all of our no smoking ordinances, just to put on the table.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Councilor Murphy-Rambaldi.
Yeah, so I definitely appreciate what Councilor Bacon is saying, and it may require us to look at some of those rules as well within our city. But, you know, I think just for the purposes of this order, I would like to ask Attorney Bissonnette, do you feel like either way, no matter how this is kind of going, do you feel like there is the need to put a binding referendum that asks the voters specifically about consumption? Or do you feel like that is something that we don't necessarily need to do at the moment? I'm curious what other municipalities are doing. And you may not have the answer tonight, so I respect that.
There's really two classes. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may respond. Through the chair, Counselor, the two schools of thought are, one, the CCC is going to wait and see what happens with the pilot programs. I see almost no way that outright smoking can be allowed under the current statutory organization for public licenses. So that's really an issue. Frankly, don't know enough about edibles, but I suppose if somebody wanted to sit around and have one before dinner or after dinner and wait till it kicks in, you know, I just don't know how you judge the fitness of someone to drive after that. So there's a lot of issues with social consumption that haven't been decided yet. Will it harm Holyoke to have a referendum? Absolutely not. The original language of the referendum that was passed for recreational marijuana required it. So what CCC may do on this is wait and see how the pilot programs go.
Yep.
But there's no harm in saying a referendum will be held.
Okay, thank you. For those reasons, Councilor Maldonado, I would just make a motion to table this for now.
Second.
Second, so the motion is to table item 12. All opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 12 is tabled. Motion to take up item 14.
Move item 14.
So item 14, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 14 is a order put in by Councilor Bartley, City Council Minutes Rule number 34 to add naming and renaming. Here's the current rule. So right now, Rule 34 is all petitions for laying out, widening, altering, or relocating streets or ways shall be presented to the City Council and by them referred to the Board of Public Works. So what Councilor Bartley's asking is to add naming and renaming as to what needs to be presented to the City Council. Any discussion on this? Councilor Reagan.
Thank you. I don't know the thinking of the maker of the order, but I do remember we had some confusion as to what procedure to follow when there were orders filed in the past, where it should go, where it should start, and how it would get finished. So it appears to me to be an effort to clarify the process.
That's all it was. I
Yeah,
remember it.
Councilor Bertley. So he actually sent a little communication. I hope this one's straightforward. He said, I thought the proposed language would help to clarify our current rule. City Council presently has the authority to both name and rename streets, and this added language will make it clear.
I'd say motion to approve.
So motion to approve item 14. Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item 14 is a yes. Okay, motion to take up item 15.
Take up item 15.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 15 is order put in by Councilor Murphy, order that the City Council consider merging the Holyoke Historical Commission and the Historic District Commissions. So what I know from this is that both commissions are waiting to actually meet and discuss this. So they've asked that we don't actually approve this, and just what I've told them is I'm going to suggest a leave to withdraw, and when the commissions are ready to merge or have the conversation, then bring it back to the council.
Motion to make a leave to withdraw.
Motion to leave to withdraw item 15. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion to take up item 17 off the table.
Move item 17.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 17 is order put in by Councilor Bacon that city councilors will attend city council and city council committee meetings in person. Exceptions can be made for remote attendance by the city council president and or committee chair, as long as the chair and a quorum is present in person. The maker of the order is here, so if you wanted to just go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
Sure, thank you. So I got a little pushback on this when I filed it because people were citing health concerns. However, I think any health concerns have been mitigated relative to our blockades, the wearing of masks, the ability to be immunized. And so my belief is that now that the pandemic is really moving into an endemic stage, that we should be normalizing our operations of our city council as the representative body of the community. I would note that I believe better decorum has taken place when we're here in person than what I've witnessed and been subject to on the Zoom and hybrid structure. And I just think we're in the business of serving people, and I think we best do that when we're together in person. Because a lot of what we do requires us to listen to differing points of view, to try to see another perspective. And it's just been my experience that we do that better when we're in the room together. So that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not a really big, deep thing. It's just more about getting back to normal. But certainly, I do think the ability of technology to allow people to participate if they're in a remote location or they're otherwise in a physical situation where they can't, health reasons, et cetera. I don't think we should be so rigid as to not let it be used either. So I'm trying to find a win-win here.
Thank you, Councilor Reagan. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
Thank you. So I want to recognize this order and totally understand where Councilor Bacon was coming from in filing this order. For a few reasons, I probably will not be in favor of it. Just as it is, I think that maybe we could change the language to that city councilors will make every attempt in their power or whatever to attend city council and city council subcommittee meetings in person. I will, just for full disclosure, I came back from Mexico, which is actually where I was in the last meeting for the Charter and Rules Committee. And I came back from Mexico. I did not have symptoms whatsoever, but I have a mother who is on chemotherapy, and I have a father who is older. And so My mom's older too. My dad's probably watching this and he's like, "You're saying that your
Getting
mom's
in
older?" You know, I'm just covering my bases here. But my first thought when I came back was, I don't have any symptoms. However, I'm going to test myself because that week I had a charter and a full city council meeting and my DGR meeting, and I actually tested positive with no symptoms. And yes, I was in Mexico, so I understand that like I was traveling and whatever. But my first thought, Councilor McGivern's here. My first thought was, I got to protect my counselors. I probably shouldn't come in. And I'm glad I didn't, because I eventually tested positive. I didn't test positive that first or second day. But so I think there should be some opportunities.
That is the point.
Right.
Yes, if there's
so
a health issue.
for my just if I wake up in the morning and I have a headache and a stuffy nose, I don't want to think about whether or not I should Zoom into that meeting or not if it's that day. So I can really appreciate the concern on getting things back to normal. I want to get there. And I will just also say that as long as we're all agreeing to be honest with each other and be transparent and not risk the concern of others, I believe that I was able to run my meeting efficiently from my home for DGR. It was not ideal. I hated it. I hated every minute of running it remotely, but I just want to have that option available. So that's really all I wanted to say, is just that I don't think it's a black or white issue. And so if the language could possibly be amended to say, we'll use their best judgment and we'll make every effort to attend in person, because I do see the difference and I agree with you on that much. I just want to allow us to have some of that flexibility still for those who are not completely comfortable.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy Rambalati. Councilor Israel Rivera.
Thank you, Councilor Maldonado Velez. So I'm pretty much of the opinion of that I would try to show up to every meeting, especially if I'm the one chairing the meeting or if I'm part of the committee or the subcommittee. In-person meeting for the full council meeting, I'm going to try to show up to every single one that I can. Again, I probably would be against it as is worded as is too as well, because I don't want to be bound to have to show up in person when the ability to be able to Zoom in is available, especially with today's age. I agree with Linda's effort with filing this order and trying to get people present, because it is a better form of running government and for us to be able to meet while we're all in person. I think for me, though, it's a little different, and I don't know how it's going to be for other counselors when they move forward, when they have babies, right? I have two daughters. I have a 2-year-old and I have a 3-month-old. Right now, they're both currently sick, and my wife last night was like, we were there till 11:30, and I was getting messages. I should have Zoomed in, but I was trying to keep to that ethic of showing up in person and all that. When I got home, I heard it. So I mean, ultimately, I hear the effort of trying to get everyone together and trying to keep the fidelity of the meeting and all the other stuff. But for me, overall, is I don't want to be bound, because I'm going to try to show up in person as much as I can. I just don't want to have to be bound and to feel like I have to choose my kids or a meeting one day, right? And I don't want to have to feel that feeling with regards to that. And for me, in the order, it doesn't say anything about kids and the other stuff too, right? It's about sickness and health. And if my kids are sick, that is piece of health. But what if they're not sick and my wife feels overwhelmed today and she might need my presence here just in case? That the Zoom piece kind of extends that for at least the family. We kind of dedicate a lot of hours to city council, which is granted we should. But ultimately, if there's an opportunity to kind of do a little bit of both, if it warrants it, right, then I would like to leave that open. And that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Councilor Rivera. Councilor Jordan.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate the spirit of what Linda is doing here. I agree with her points, and I think the preference should be definitely for us to appear in person, particularly at the full council meetings. I think a little more latitude on the committee meetings. But I do agree with Councilor Murphy Ramboletti and Councilor Rivera very much so as well. I think a lot of this is going to be out of our hands come, I think it's July. Mike maybe can weigh in for us. I think the current open meeting law amendments are running right now through July. We'll see what the state legislature is going to do with that long term. You know, what we're doing here now is like completely unprecedented, except for the last 2 years. We were never allowed to have, you know, remote participation like we do today. So this was like heavily frowned upon in the old days. But I'm kind of interested to see that now that we've been using it for 2 years, does the legislature just sort of take a whole new approach to this and say, hey, that wasn't the end of the world, and you know, the people, you know, the people are still being served and it's okay. And with so much work now being done remotely, even in our own professional lives, there's people that are full-time remote workers now. It's become an industry norm in many industries, including my own. So it's probably with us to stay long-term. Maybe what we do is have something where, you know, there should be a general understanding, particularly for the full council meetings, unless you have a real like health issue. I think people should definitely try to make it for the full council meetings. And for the committee meetings, it should be highly encouraged as well, but if you can't, you can't. And let's kind of just see where this goes. Maybe we table this for now and take a longer term approach, you know, and see how it's going. I think people really respect what Councilor Bacon, her points are, and I think we agree with the spirit of it. It's, but I do agree, the flexibility, it does help, and it is appreciated. And interestingly enough, it also goes to, you know, the citizen participation remotely. That was also prohibited years ago as well. So they also, I think if we're going to have a rule for counselors, we'd also have to enforce that rule on the public as well. So something for us to consider. I think the best approach right now, all things considered, is take a wait and see approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate all the comments, so I'll be quick and to the point. I actually liked it when we were all Zoom, and I thought we were efficient. But that short period of time when we could not come into this building didn't last that long, and thank God for Zoom to get us through the past 2 years of the pandemic, not just for us as elected officials, but as Councilor Jordan pointed out, for the public to be able to not just watch us, but if and when appropriate, you know, speak to us. And that's what I think Zoom has brought to it. I understand, Councilor Bacon. I you know, can't wait for the day when we're all going to feel comfortable to be in here 100% of the time, but I don't think that day's quite here yet. And I think until we know what the state's going to do, because they may incorporate some type of remote options in the future. And if that's there, I will say, I'm not a fan of hybrid, but I do like the choice of to be able to stay home on a given night. Full city council meetings, I agree, are a little bit different, but you know, when there's certain items on the agenda, I've watched sometimes, you know, the video portion on the Access channel, but all you can do is watch. You know, when you're on Zoom, you can, when appropriate, be able to hop in. So I think I'd like to just wait and see what the state's going to do. You know, after the pandemic, open meeting law rules change, are they going to allow us to do some remote? Are they going to allow the public to do some remote? It's going to be interesting. Our public participation level has grown with Zoom, and that's interesting, you know, to a point where it's taken up a lot of time, and we have to be careful, but it's nice to have that participation level there.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. I'll just put in my 2 cents real quick. I hear what everyone's saying. I think the pandemic taught us a lot of things. It unearthed a lot of inequities that this country has, and I think Zoom in particular was one tool that taught us that we can access these meetings. We can have access to, like Councilor Jordan mentioned, work, and there were parties on Zoom, there were gatherings. So like there is a huge opportunity and like a huge benefit to keeping Zoom. I do understand where the Councilor Bacon's coming from with this order, but I also hear, and I wouldn't want to vote on it today. I would like to table it because of what Councilor McGivern said and what everyone, I think we're all feeling and knowing is that this may actually just become the normal at the state level, and we actually may not have an actual say if we have to be in person. So, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. So I do appreciate being reminded of the July deadline, because I didn't really have that in my mind in terms of what had been set relative to the suspension of those issues. So I think that's a really good point to consider. But I just do want to clarify that when I said exceptions could be made, I didn't talk about any reason why. I just said exceptions could be made, so that it wasn't entirely one way or another, if it was allowable. So I want to be clear about that, okay?
Thank you, Councilor Bacon.
I'll make a motion to table this and just.
Second.
Motion to table item 17 has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, tabled. Motion to take up item 18.
Item 18.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 18 was put in by Councilor Murphy Ramboletti, co-signed by Councilor Jordan. Order that the City Council adopt a rule to establish a 2-year legislative term. Any orders pending in committee or not acted on by the end of the legislative term must be refiled at the start of the subsequent legislative term. This is the first time we're taking this up, so I am excited for this conversation. Open for discussion.
Motion to approve.
Okay. I guess there's no discussion. Motion to approve. Seconded. Well,
You can talk about it.
yeah.
Discussion.
It makes absolute
I'm
sense.
mostly-
I mean, I was going to eye it, but Councilor McGivern.
Councilor McGivern.
I defer to the makers of the orders before you hear what I
Okay.
have to say, but
Joe, I always love to hear what you have to
you
say.
may not tonight.
Oh no! No, this is why we get along, Councilor McGivern.
Motion to
'cause-
adjourn.
Well, okay, Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
So I will just give a little background on my reasoning behind this order. Really, it was because as a new counselor, I was looking at all of the different items that were in different jackets. For those of you who are watching and don't know what the jacket is, it's essentially where all of the orders that get filed go into this, essentially a folder. And then we have the opportunity to bring things up as a committee to discuss, which is essentially what we're doing tonight. But my thing about this order was two reasons. One is just really because I was looking through my own jacket as the chair of DGR, Development Government Relations, and there were a lot of orders in the jacket that were irrelevant at the point where, and this was not just unique to the DGR. It's not a reflection on any one person. I've seen this through a lot of subcommittees where, for whatever reason, we didn't have the time to discuss it. It may not have been a priority at the time. And things change, we're even seeing it tonight as we go through these orders where, some of the rules that we have before us make sense. However, perhaps we could change it because the world changes and Holyoke changes and overall things change. And so My purpose of filing this this order, was really to understand that every city councilor is reelected every 2 years. And at the end of those 2 years, it's important that we take a look back at what was filed, but it's also important that we move forward. And so that was one reason why I filed this. To be honest, the other reason why I filed this is just that one of the things that perhaps it's because I was a former city employee, but just, I wanted to use this as an opportunity to motivate or incentivize members of the body to either act on an order or maybe think a few extra minutes on why they might be filing a certain order. Is this going to get addressed? Is this something that is a priority for us as a body right now? Could this be solved with picking up the phone and calling a department head? So for me, a lot of it is about efficiency. And those are the reasons why I filed it. I will not speak for Councilor Jordan, but I think it's proof that we can all get along, and also that, Councilor McGivern, you may not agree, and we like that. We like a good, healthy debate. So those are my thoughts, and I will turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy Rambaldi. I'm going to recognize Councilor Jordan before Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, yes, everything Councilor Murphy Rambaldi said, I 100% agree with. I think this is a long overdue rule. Number one is it saves us these exercises of having to go through and give leave to withdraw to ancient orders. Frequently we'll go back 4, 5, 6 years of orders, and we're just cleaning these jackets out. By the way, the state legislature has this rule in Massachusetts that if you do not adopt something by the end of the term, it turns into a pumpkin, and you have to refile it for the next session. I don't want to have to look into the brain of somebody who filed something 5 years ago who might not even be here anymore and say, gee, what were they thinking about, in 2017 when they filed order XYZ on something? I think the cleanest way to do it is, if you really think something's important, just refile it. Any one of us can file an order on any topic and do it. I think we also need to consider too that when we talk about things and we do things and we debate something, okay, that's good for that period of time, and we don't just keep going over the same items over and over and over. And a lot of this stuff ends up, oh, well, just table it and throw it back into committee, and maybe we'll get to it again. It's just good form to do this. So I really think this is long overdue. We operate on a 2-year term system, and I think that makes enough. I think that makes all the sense.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Jordan, Councilor McGivern, and then Councilor Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't totally disagree with the both speakers and the order that they've co-sponsored, but I do disagree with adopting this as a rule. And I'm all in favor of purging committee jackets. Councilor Bacon has done it well. New councilors, chairs have done it well this year, and we've seen it in the past. Because, and I think Councilor Jordan pointed out, we get orders that sit in committee forever that shouldn't be there. And it's not the fault of the chair or the committee. Sometimes there are orders that probably shouldn't even be before us. Or they should be before us for a short period of time, get it up or down, get it out of committee, and just take a vote on it. It's not that they're less important to the maker of the order, but they are probably less important to the body itself. But here's the way, and I learned this from our former city clerk, Jimmy Shea, whose picture's up on my left-hand shoulder here up on the wall, is government is ongoing. And any one of us that files an order, the motion is to receive and refer to the committee on. To receive, maybe adopt, rare, but refer to the committee. And then it's the entire body who takes over and decides if they want that order to go to committee for action, discussion, education, and to report back to the full body for a final vote. And as it's always going to be the maker of the order, and many times co-sponsored orders that have ownership of that, but doesn't the full city council now take over ownership? We don't have to send it to committee. We don't have to say, out of courtesy, I think most of the time we will, and want to hear what the maker of the order is trying to get, or the constituents of the maker of the orders are trying to get before us, the courtesy and respect to hear it. But it's the full body that takes over it. Now that's on a lot of orders that we file, and a lot of them that do become caught in committee. I want to talk about some other orders. Financial transfers and appropriations from a department head, okayed by the mayor, with the chairman of the finance's name on it. That's a mayor, only the mayor can initiate those. That's a mayor's order, put before us oftentimes because of something that we're halfway through the budget when the end of the term comes. And someone, department head, went to the mayor, maybe the beginning of December, it gets to us, maybe the second meeting of December. If we have to get rid of that just because we didn't vote on it in December, we now stop the process of a department that needs money or needs to juggle money in their budget to pay a bill, to pay salaries, to do something that has changed in the middle of the year. And to me, I don't think we can just carte blanche throw those out the window without having some avenue that says they can keep there. Petitioners, including a city councilor or the public, puts a zone amendment language change in front of us, okay? That immediately starts the clock ticking, sets up a public hearing. Most public hearings are continued for a second public hearing night to get information that is not available the night that someone was looking for it. And that process easily takes an ordinance committee, 2 months, sometimes 3 months. Not because the ordinance committee is doing anything wrong. It's just the minutia of how these petitions and these orders get through that committee itself. The use of the need to use the law department to put something in legal form doesn't always happen in 30 days. Our law department is strapped, as we know, but that takes time. So, it's not so much purging a committee of what's been in there for a year, 2 years, maybe more, that I'm worried about. That should be done. Except I will note that the Finance Committee jacket is purged on its own. There's nothing in the Finance Committee jacket except the 6 items you'll see this coming Monday and nothing's been there that long. But finance is different. People need money, people need answers real quick, and we do turn it over real quick. Ordinance can be very time consuming, and I get it. And DGR with the property transfers and things that are before us, another one to be careful of. We declare a piece of property surplus, that's our first vote. Our second vote is only the mayor negotiates the sale of the property, but we get to say yes or no to that proposal by the mayor. And if we lost something like that, that's a process that, outside of our own process has been ongoing, with the mayor and with the, people who are trying to bid on property and get it back on the tax rolls. So I'm as it is written, I'm against just purging everything for the sake of purging it, because I think we're going to lose too much work that in the middle of the term, in the middle of the fiscal year, that's in front of us.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern, Councilor Reagan, and then Councilor Murphy-Oberlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think similar to the order that I filed, I could support this if there were some modifications to the language. If a matter is not acted on at all by the committee, then I think that should go. However, if a matter is pending in committee, I think those are the ones, to Councilor McGivern's point, and I would point to an example where in December, a public hearing was continued to March. Okay? So it's crossing the years, but it's in keeping with other regulatory processes to accomplish necessary work. So I think we could tweak this language a little bit and come up with something very workable, because I believe the members of the ordinance committee, who have now looked at approximately 70 orders to essentially give leave to withdraw, that it was really unnecessary. And much of it was duplication, and they should have just been gone without a whole big process. So I'm in favor of the concept if we just tweak it a little.
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Councilor Murphy-Rambelotti.
Yeah, so I really appreciate Councilors McGivern and Bacon, Councilor Jordan. I am fully willing to table this for the time being, or maybe I'm supposed to file a new order.
No,
It
so
can be amended.
It can be amended?
yeah.
Okay.
my-
So, because I do agree, my intent wasn't necessarily to give leave to withdraw for things that, let's say, were filed in the last 2 or 3 months of a legislative term, or if they have a time-sensitive commitment. So maybe we could,
Before you make the motion, just a couple points I wanted to make too. I hear what everyone's saying. Another one that I believe should not be voted on today. We should definitely discuss further. My thought is, what I'm worried about is someone's a chair of a committee. They stand completely opposite of someone that put in an order, and they purposely don't put an order on the agenda so that the 2 years are up. So that's really what my fear is when it comes to that. And I mean, that's, I guess, basically what's been happening in a way, but it's sort of like this gives it more power to be like, well, we don't have to do it up and it's going to come up. I also know that we are still in month 2 of our time, so I think we still have a little bit of time to really decide on this and really hash it out. Administrative Assistant Anderson Burgos has his hands up. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I know it usually, hold on, let me turn off my microphone. Sorry. Where did it go? Just need to change my audio settings so I'm not hearing myself.
See, that's why we should have the Wizard of Oz in the room with us.
The man behind the curtain. Jeffrey, I feel like you should come out and join us and say what you gotta say.
Sorry, I turned down my microphone instead of turning down my speaker. So I know it's usually a little bit out of bounds for the administrative assistant to participate in these, but I think I have kind of an important perspective on this since I keep the records for the committees. And I just do want to point out that wherever this process does go, it should be clear, if this is adopted in some form or fashion, what the process is with the orders or in the jacket, because a few months back when there was a little bit of back and forth on orders going stale after a certain time, it was really kind of unclear what I do with the orders that are in the jacket, whether or not I give them back to the clerk, if they're just stored away, if they go in their recycling bin, what they do. So wherever you do take this process, I would just encourage making it clear what the physical process is of handling the orders that are in the jacket. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any other discussion on this item?
So you want to table it to
The motions.
motion to table?
second?
Motion to table. I hear a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so item 18 tabled. Motion to take up item 19. Do I hear a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So item 19 is an order by me, relook at committee responsibilities and restructure, refer to charter and rules. So this is the big that task itself is a big responsibility, so it's not something to be final today. But I think what I sort of going on with this last conversation on orders and responsibilities and what orders goes where, really relooking, and I mean, I'm part of the ordinance committee, and there's orders in there that are ordinance committee orders, but really my goal with this is, do they all have to be ordinance committee orders, and how can we relook? Do we create a subcommittee under ordinance committee? Whatever it may be, we can have that discussion. But I think it's just a way to make it more efficient, making sure that orders that are put in committees will have the ample time to actually be taken up and whatnot. Go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
So I would just chime in to let you know that that's how DGR committee got formed.
Right.
DGR took a lot of the work from ordinance because many of those things were in ordinance.
Yep.
Not all of them, because it was already a separate committee.
Okay.
But that is how that other part of the work of that committee was developed.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this?
If I could,
Councilor McGivern.
a good point by Councilor Bacon, and just as the committee looks at this, and we've done this, and I think, maybe not every year, maybe we should do it every term, just to see what the makeup of our new membership is and what the committee's makeups are going to be to make sense out of them. But it's not just rules. There's language in the charters that make certain things of finance, or only to a finance committee, and certain things that need legal forms and ordinance changes or adoptions to only go to ordinance. And so it's just, we'll just get the law department to, I think, combine all that together, so as we discuss it, we'll know what the charter says, what the rule says, and there are some ordinances out there too that, dictate what we do and don't do.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Any other discussion? All right, so I'm just going to make a motion to table item 19. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion to take item 20. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So motion, item 20 is filed by Maldonado Velez, myself, add rule to require a set monthly meetings time of all city council committees. This one is transparency sakes and just a conversation with the people in the community, really wanting to know when exactly the meetings are versus waiting for meetings to just pop up in a way. I think the 48-hour open meeting law requirement helps with that, but if it's something like the second and sort of similar with the full council meeting, we know it's the first and third Tuesday of every month. Could we do something similar with the committees as well? So discussion. Councilor Murphy Ramboletti.
So I can really actually appreciate why you filed this rule. As a very new committee chair, I have been hesitant to set a monthly meeting time simply because, especially for some subcommittees, it seems that you may not know if there's something super time sensitive. Should we be scheduling a meeting? And also, I've been trying to avoid having a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. But that being said, if this rule meant that, it allowed our committee members, our counselors to at least know in advance when something could be happening, if the chair of each committee had the ability to, I guess, cancel that or, decide there's really no purpose for me to have a meeting. For example, I personally have not felt a reason to meet urgently with DGR because there's nothing in our jacket that is super time sensitive. So that's why I pushed it to Wednesday, March 23rd as our next meeting. So if there's a way to just kind of balance that and give the chair some kind of flexibility to say, I may not always need the second Thursday of the month or whatever it is. I may not always need that time, but at least it's there. I think that makes a lot of sense. So those are just my thoughts on that.
So, yeah, and just to go off that, yes, I agree that we're not just gonna randomly meet just because we're gonna meet. So I think giving the option, to, if there's no reason to meet, then yeah, we shouldn't be meeting. I think what I get from that though is if it's 1, 2, 3 months at this point we're still not meeting, then that for me is the question. So what's the point of this committee? So that's my thought on that. I think Councilor Bacon had her hand right now. Any other discussion? Councilor McGivern.
I would love to see something like this take place. It's a timing thing though too, because your full city council, as we know, meets the first and third Tuesdays of the month. Now, finance and ordinance is pretty much Tuesday or twice a month, Tuesday or Wednesday, and dictated a lot by public hearings. When we alleviated the workload in ordinance by putting the special permits into DGR, that took up and dictated some of the demand on DGR, for special hearings. And once you get tied into that, it's kind of hard, to say DGR is going to meet every moment, every third Wednesday of the month or something, because when you go to continue a public hearing, you need some flexibility. And that's, if you look at the 3 DGR, finance, and ordinance, they have 5 members because they're more important than any other committee, but the workload and the demand is immediate. If I found in finance, the workload has increased incredibly as we adopted ordinances that took away what department heads and mayors could do during the course of a fiscal year. They have less and less options that the state allows to transfer money within their budget without coming back to us, which is fine, but that's putting a bigger burden on the city council and on the finance committee and as far as time constraints go with the amount of orders that have increased into finance. Most finance orders don't require a public hearing, but it's usually a need in a department or a need to get a grant that does have time constraints on it, accepted, adopted, and allowed the mayor and appropriate departments to spend that money. So if you took those 3 committees and gave them, we used to do finance on every other Monday. There are 3 Monday holidays during the course of the year. Causes a problem. If you did DGR on every other or once Wednesday a month, and you do ordinance twice a month, all of a sudden there's not a lot left over. And it's very hard to do things the week of the city council. We try not to, but sometimes we squeeze a meeting in the Monday before, but you don't know what is where until after the city council meeting. So the 48-hour notice is hard to set the agenda during that week for Wednesday or we don't use a lot of Thursdays, but it's been an option. I mean, Councilor McGee and I can tell you, we've met on Saturday morning. We met on Christmas Eve once. Yep. Councilor Bacon and Councilor Jordan, remember that one. We've been on, Friday nights is the hardest one, but we have done it. But, obviously we try to avoid it. Not just for our sake, but I think the public at large don't want to be watching us on Friday night and Saturday morning. It's cartoon time, right? But that's, I trying to do it, I think, is, I give a lot of credit to the committee. Just to keep that in mind, though. We got some real time constraints.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Councilor McGee?
Yeah, I know you and I spoke about this in the very beginning. I don't think we need a rule. I think if you establish a meeting, a monthly meeting, and try and lock in that date, and we, let others know that, hey, your charter and rules doesn't have anything in it, that's open, and we withdraw it from that month, it gives that flexibility that I think you're trying to achieve, and some type of system. But everything that Joe has said and Tessa, it's true. In essence, it's hard to do this based on the way things come in and the way certain committees have more to do than others. So to me, schedule out. If you know in advance that month you're not going to be able to want to have a meeting, Jeffrey blasts that out so that way ordinance, DG&R, finance can grab it and go. And I think that, not a rule, just really people are just working together to get it done right.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Anyone else? Okay. Councilor Rivera.
I just wanted to make a comment about the Saturday cartoons, man. They don't exist anymore. They took them away from me, man. That's it.
He says with the baby on his arm. I love it.
So, okay. So, what I'm hearing, I mean, it's hard, and I agree. There's with the 7 committees having like a confirmed actual time. There's a lot of stuff that comes up. I think for me, as what I mentioned earlier before, is that I mean, if the committee's not meeting at least monthly, bi-monthly, why does it exist? Like, what other responsibilities, what other tasks should our councilors be really taking on to make sure that we're serving our people better and properly? But I will, so Councilor McGee, you say establish a monthly meeting. So like more of a suggestion, like a monthly meeting is required of all committees, or?
If you want to schedule out, you know, your monthly meetings, and then you know ahead of time that you're not going to meet that month or that week, you know, Jeffrey follows up with all the committee chairs to let them know that that date is now open. So it's kind of like a tentative hold.
Yeah,
Then can
I
be
like
changed.
that. Yeah.
I mean, I know ordinance we've been doing second and fourth Tuesday. I don't know. Go ahead, Councilor Reagan. Go ahead.
Well, so the 4th Tuesday is locked in with Jeffrey. There's a problem on the second Tuesdays, which I've already articulated to the committee.
So I'm almost sorry. I'm hearing so not requiring, but like at least a monthly meeting. Encouraging at least a monthly meeting, and with the realization that's with what I've been saying, we're not meeting. What's the point? So I'm not sure what.
Motion.
Go ahead, Councilor Bacon.
Okay, sorry.
So I just wanted to suggest, because one of the other orders is looking over the duties and what will be contained within each committee. And so if there is a particular committee that's overloaded and one that doesn't need to meet monthly, well, there is an opportunity. I know nobody on the ordinance committee would be complaining if the meetings were a little shorter.
Thank you, Councilor Reagan. Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we don't necessarily need a rule on this issue. I think the best approach is if the president should, you know, this is kind of really his or her purview. Whereas if he doesn't see committees meeting on a regular basis, that he should be talking to the person that he's picked as the chair and say, you know, I notice you haven't met in 3 or 4 months and you have items in that committee. What's going on? You know, I would assume that it would be at that level and there would be a conversation. And if the committee isn't running the right way, that the president would take it up to his appointee, that's the chair. So that's kind of how that's been handled in the past. And fortunately, to my knowledge, it's never been a problem.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Any other discussion?
I'm going to say that it's complied with. Because you're looking at the other committees, or you're looking at the committees to try and redefine them.
So, okay.
So this is
Second.
complied with because when you redefine work going there, if we go that route,
Okay.
it'll kind of
Yeah.
help out.
So
I
the
think our administrative assistant has made a big difference in this,
Yeah.
because I know, I've looked at the calendar, and even if you don't have the agenda, he posts it, so the public can see just by going on the website, you know, ordinance is gonna meet these times next month, finance is gonna meet. And then as soon as it's ready, you know, the agenda goes right onto it. It's been helpful to, I think, the finance, so.
I'll
it makes it a little
second
easier.
Councilor McGee's motion.
So the motion has been made for item 20 to be complied with. I heard a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Thank you. All right, 2 more items. Motion to take up item 21.
All right, take up item 21.
Do I hear a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Any opposed? So item 21 is put in by Councilor Givner. It is that the City Council consider changing Rule 44A to reflect the following. All council and subcommittee agendas and legal forms should be distributed to council members by 1 p.m. 7 calendar days prior to the scheduled meeting or by Monday, the previous business day at 1 p.m. in the event the 7 days prior falls on a legal holiday, and that late files are in fact necessary. So we do have the maker of the order here, Councilor Givner. Take it away.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair. I just filed this order because I felt like items are distributed a little last minute, and I don't really understand why they need to be. It seems that even late files that come in don't always seem like an emergency. So, and I just put in a full week instead of having things distributed the weekend before. I have noticed that in other municipalities, they get their items at least a week, if not 2 weeks in advance. And I think that really gives all the council members a chance to, really read through things, look for things, figure things out, make phone calls, be in touch with anyone they might be interested in being in touch with to follow up. And I think we've already talked about legal form coming out earlier, but I just thought it would be really nice if everything came out a full week before, so there's not so many last minute items in our dockets. Everyone has a busy schedule, and this is we all want to dive in, but it'd be really nice to have the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Givner. I will say I understand because I think when we get our agendas on Friday, and then there's certain items on there that we would like to discuss with certain people, we technically only have Monday and Tuesday available to do it. So I do understand that part. The only thing that I guess my question is, so just this is a good example where if the agenda for next week's full council meeting was already set for next week, then the items that we discussed today and yesterday during ordinance may not actually pop on the agenda unless we do it as a late file. Because technically the agenda, based on this order, technically the agenda for next week would have been already put in on Monday, this past Monday. So that's really where I'm at with that. Any other discussion for Councilor McGivern?
And I wish this was something that could work, because I think we all want more time to be able to educate ourselves on what's upcoming and for votes. It's not just about committees. The agenda is divided into 4 basic parts. The incoming, which are communications, which people are communicating to us right up to before our final vote, communicating minutes from their commission meetings, communicating a lot of different things. And some of that is important and not available, that far in advance. Some of it is available that far in advance, but the final agenda, I think you really want to discuss this with the city clerk. The next part is besides the president's report and things like that, the next part are petitions, which is governed by Mass General Law, charter and ordinances, where voters have a right to file things before us. And that's, again, they're going to file it, and time constraints are immediately kicked in. I think the part about our orders coming in, the incoming part, is relatively simple, because we try to keep that unwritten rule, refer it to committee for discussion, and then get it back out of committee for a final vote. And then the hardest and most important part of the agenda are the final votes, which typically is what's coming out of committee. And like you said, a lot of that doesn't take place that far in advance, or it would curtail this committee and any committee that met this week from getting something out for vote for next week. There are sometimes 5 Tuesdays in a month. A final vote will go from 2 weeks to 4 weeks to sometimes a month and a half. And when you look at financial transfers and other items, and sometimes public hearings that are closed set a clock where we have to take a vote within 90 days, one example. And if we eliminate that because we don't have we're waiting for the recommendation of the planning board who didn't close their public hearing, now we're really in trouble. So, Councilor Givner, I love this order, but it's just, there are some practical reasons why I think, the city clerk and our administrative assistant could probably add some ideas here, but it would be difficult, would put a hardship on a lot of different things that we do.
Thank you, Councilor McGivern. Anyone else? Okay. So, I mean, this is where I'm at with this. I think it's a discussion as far as like organizing everything and making things more efficient. Like, I totally get that. But I'll be honest, I feel like tonight I can't vote in favor of this because it just is not practical. Like we just can't, it just won't make sense right now. But I do believe that it's a discussion that we should have. Like, how do we make sure that we get enough time to do our homework and be able to ask the questions to department heads or whatever it may be. I mean, I think another thing that's coming to my mind, another question that we haven't really discussed today is what is an order? What should be an order? What shouldn't be an order? Which is, I think, a bigger conversation, which I think may help with this not having so many items and be overwhelming. I would entertain your motion.
I mean,
So-
it reads to consider changing the rule for the time frame suggested. Maybe that we did consider it and it's been complied with.
Would second.
Cool. Thank you. So the motion is for it to be complied with. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So complied with item 21. Motion to take up item 22.
Take up 22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So item 22, Councilor Gifner, that the City Council limits debate of items covered in committee to 60-second clarifications in the form of question or inquiry only, with a limit of 3 questions/inquiries per councilor, and that responses be no more than 60 seconds each as well. Councilor Gifner.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So with that was really intended specifically for counselors, as the whole purpose of subcommittee, I feel, is to really discuss these matters and to have the public hearings on those matters, and for all the city councilors to be involved in, giving their insight and their, expertise on the various items on the table. It seems that for city council meetings, we get a little bogged down with repetitive discussions that happened in subcommittee, where I feel that those who had the chance to discuss these things in subcommittee are on the same page, while others may or may not have been available for subcommittee. And I'm speaking about counselors specifically, would like to debate those items during the city council meetings. And I really feel that the city council meetings are a little more geared towards the public comment and voting on the various matters. So, as far as clarifications on items that were discussed in subcommittee, I think that's, the place for it. There is the chairs of the subcommittees do like a recap and give a pretty nice breakdown of what happened in subcommittee, what was discussed, what was decided upon, and why it's, how it landed back in the full council for a vote. So I just really wonder if we can't make the city council meetings a little more user friendly for the public by recapping and not necessarily rehashing the exact same discussions that we've already had in subcommittee, where we've all really spent a lot of time discussing, and where most counselors, if they were interested, have made it a point to be available for those subcommittees too.
Thank you, Councilor Givner. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councilor Givner, I fully understand, I think, and appreciate why you filed this order. For the sake of, keeping things brief and just recognizing everyone's time. I actually was considering filing a very similar order. However, my concern with this order as it's written is just essentially the enforceability of that order. And like, who's gonna keep time of this? Is our city council administrative assistant gonna set his timer every time someone talks and make sure that it's less than 60 seconds? I think, in order, I do support something like this because I agree that it's important. This is why we have committees, is to have that discussion that is in-depth and transparent, and something that, is, if you're interested in this, if you're not on the committee and you want to tune in, you want to give your 2 cents, that's awesome. But I feel, and I've seen this in other municipalities, their city council meetings last way shorter than ours, and it's because they have their full discussions in subcommittees, and they also pick up the phone and talk to each other, and not in violation of open meeting law. But so for me, I guess I might want to make an amendment to this and just kind of say something more general, where like matters that are already discussed in committee should, in full council, be limited. Maybe it's to a 10-minute discussion altogether about that one topic, so folks can get the word out about how they feel on a certain issue, even if they've already had that opportunity in committee. But the other thing that I've seen other councils do, even I believe the town of Amherst, which is one of the ones I think that you mentioned in your research, they do this thing at the beginning of their meeting, every city council meeting. Each councilor gets 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting to talk about what's important to them that night. And that's your thing. That's when you get your opportunity to say, so items, whatever, I'm going to vote in favor of this because blah, blah, blah. Everyone gets 5 minutes to talk about what's important to them. And then when those things come up, we don't have to have a 20, 30, 40-minute discussion that has already happened in a subcommittee meeting. So at this point, I'm sort of in favor of this order, not as it's currently written, because I do think limiting it to 60 seconds per person, it's just a lot to keep track of. But I do respect the intent and hope that there is a way where we don't have to reiterate a lot of the things that we all had the opportunity to discuss in our subcommittees. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy-Ramballetti. Before recognizing the other councilors, I do want to put in my 2 cents. Thank you, Councilor Givner, for putting in this order. I agree with, I understand why you put it on. I think a lot of us realize, and I know I personally ran because of that reason, where a lot of the discussions should be had in committee. And today is actually a perfect example. We have 11 of our 13 councilors here. So there's a lot of debate that has been happening here. So sort of the expectation is that when we're in full city council, we're not rehashing a lot of these debates again because it's already discussed and the inputs are in. Now the reality is there's only 3 of us that get to vote on what gets referred to the city council. So I totally understand that. But this is where the long discussion should be happening. I agree with that. And the full council should have more of a streamlined and shorter process to things. But I do agree with Councilor Murphy-Ramballetti as far as like limiting individual people to 6 seconds. I think that is, I know one members of the public mentioned it before, Nev, where it's like, this is a democracy. People should be able to speak as long as you are free to speak. But how do we make things quicker? How do we make things go quicker? So even a suggested item where this item is suggested that we spend 10 minutes on it. We can go on for 20, 30, whatever it is, but realize that you look like kind of like a jerk if we're passing the 10-minute mark because we all have other things to do as well. And a lot of this discussion was already had in the committee. So yeah, I don't have, I'm interested to see what other people have to say. So Councilor Kevin Jordan. Jordan, there you go.
Yeah, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I have a lot of opinions. Most of them are pretty strong on this topic. This isn't the first time we've seen the gag rule before in our history. That's really what this order is. Again, I chalk this up to people are new to the institution. I think you need to have a couple terms under your belt before you start opining, in my humble opinion, about being too rigid in your thinking about how the institution should work. Be here for a little while, have some more on-the-job training. Because let me tell you something, democracy is about hearing all the arguments. And to get in the way between myself as a counselor and having an opportunity to articulate whatever I want to articulate to my constituents is a really dangerous place to be for this community, just as it is for me to get in between you and your constituents to articulate your message. We already have a rule that each counselor can only speak twice on an issue, okay? And you're supposed to stick to the topic. You need leave of the council to speak a third time. Getting into this thing about it's 1 minute, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, somebody has something on topic with facts and going, they have the right to make that persuasive argument, even if they're in the losing side. And I will admit, I am in the minority as a general rule, especially on fiscal issues on this council, as we saw the other night on that 9-4 vote on the 475. I have no problem if every vote in this council is 12-1, if I'm doing what I feel is best for my constituents. They've seen my job performance for now my 13th term. They apparently like what I have to say, or they wouldn't keep returning me to the city council. So if they thought I talked too much or didn't have anything meaningful to add in the discussions, I would have been out of here a long time ago. Second point, if the meetings are too long, I'm sorry, that comes with the job. If you don't want to come to these meetings and be here for the time commitment involved, you might want to find another line of work, because that's the way democracy works. And that's what you signed up for. And I'm sorry if democracy is going to get in the way of people having to occasionally listen to important discussions. These things are really important to the community. These are big topics, talking about our future. And the fact of the matter is, our constituents don't get the opportunity to watch every subcommittee meeting. The vast majority of the constituents watch the main meeting. That's where the action is. That's where all the final votes are taken. People raise points at the final meetings, and we have an opportunity and should rebut the arguments that people make if we have a different opinion, whether it's against my opinion or for my opinion or any other counselor's opinion. Everybody should have an opportunity to say what they have to say. I feel really strongly about that. We're supposed to be a deliberative body. I think these type of rules are dangerous. I think they're anti-democratic. I think they're designed by definition to silence the minority view on many issues so that everybody's just in lockstep, nodding their heads on favor of issues, and to keep people in the dark and keep the public in the dark while the majority does whatever the hell the majority wants to do. I think every counselor should be opposed to a rule like this. And whatever Amherst town meeting or city council is doing, I could care less what the Amherst town council's doing. I can just tell you from here, if anything, we don't have enough discussions of what goes on about the public. And I don't think the problem of the city council is that we work too hard. I don't think we've historically had that problem. I think it's great that a lot of people are coming to the committee meetings. We actually have had committee meeting attendance problems in the past. I don't think we're going to have that problem with the current city council, because I think there's a lot of new energy, and that's great. But whether well-intentioned or not, this rule is the opposite of what we should be doing, and we should be encouraging discussion and people airing their opinions, whatever those are. And then at that point, let the public decide what they think is best, and who they think the elected representatives be. And if they can't track down every committee meeting to hear the discussion, I don't think that's fair to the constituents. I think they should have an opportunity, if a counselor wants to speak, to hear it at the meeting. So thank you. Very much opposed to this type of a rule change. Have been in the past, and the council has never passed a rule change like this, because I'll tell you, much more harm will come than good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. Councilor Puello.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councilor Jordan on this. I mean, this is, it's a little scary. Yeah, she last. It's a little scary. I mean, Russia's getting ready to invade Ukraine, and I mean, we're talking about censoring people in a democracy. I mean, that's kind of silly. Like, we all ran. We're all talking about like the timing. Oh, well, we want the meetings to end earlier. I think we all ran, and we knew exactly what was in store when we did this. I think we knew how long the meetings. I think we all understood the debate. I think we all understood what we were in for. So, and we heard the public comment, by the way, last week when somebody came on. I think you mentioned it, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I don't think people agree with this. Why would we want to limit what we get to say? I sit in this chair. Sometimes I don't have anything to say. Sometimes I do. And by the way, thanks everybody for approving my third time to speak at the last meeting. I really appreciated that. I didn't think I was going to get it. But those are the rules we have in place to already enforce things like this. And I think we should just stick to those and enforce those. But I really don't think this is a good idea. And, as far as the committee thing, so we're not all on the same subcommittees. So if I have research to do, a lot of these things might change. They might evolve as time goes on. So if I do a little bit of research on this person, or maybe I haven't been able to sit down and schedule a meeting with somebody like public service, for example, and that wants to get appointed to a board. Maybe I didn't have a chance to speak with them, or maybe Councilor Rivera or somebody else that's not on the board didn't get an opportunity to talk. So a lot of these things are evolving, they're changing, and people are doing their research. So I think it's okay to talk about things past the subcommittee. We can absolutely talk about it. People don't always have the time to watch the subcommittee. We represent those people, so we have those conversations for them in the subcommittee, and I have no problem having it again in the full committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Puello. We have Councilor Rivera, Bacon, and then Murphy Rambalari. So, Councilor Rivera.
So, I hear all points made with regards to being able to speak at will for as long as you want, I guess, right? As long as you're able to put the message out. Give me a second, because my wife is calling me for some reason. There you go. It's not my wife, it's my daughter. I knew what I signed up for, right? When I ran, I knew I signed up for a part-time gig, right? I didn't know it would become somewhat of a full-time gig, and I'm okay with it. I have no issues with that if we're getting actual work done, right? If we're actually doing something that's progressing the movement, whatever the council is, whatever we're trying to push forward, if we are actually progressing, moving something forward. If we're talking in circles and we're continuing to grandstand just because we can and we feel like it, that's a different story, right? I don't know if that's what democracy is. I mean, you can feel that if you want, but those are just feelings and opinions. Democracy is actually the voice of the people, giving the public more time to speak versus us more time to speak, right? So when the public goes up to speak, they get a minute. If not, they get cut short sometimes. So if we're talking about actual democracy, then we should be increasing the time that the public has to actually speak versus us getting more time to speak. I do agree that everyone should have the chance to speak, and everyone should have the chance to speak their truth A lot of the things that Kevin said, I do agree with to a certain extent, though, because sometimes, as we've seen before, there are other counselors that, how do you call it? They'll go up there and they'll speak for a good 35, 45 minutes. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I've had times where there were topics that or issues or certain things that I wanted to bring up, and I literally lost them because the person was talking so long. It's like, Jesus, can I get a shot? In a sense, like, how do we balance that, right? How do we balance communication? How do we balance trying to get all of us together on the same page to move forward instead of doing a make pretend filibuster, right? Here at City Council. But in a sense, I guess I don't know how to do that. The 60 seconds thing, that might be too short of a time for people to speak. That might not give enough people time to speak. I think Springfield did something similar that we could possibly look at. But again, I would like to do it in a way where the whole council would be in agreement with it, not something that I feel like is good and then Kevin doesn't agree or Will doesn't agree or Linda doesn't agree. I feel like it has to be something that we all feel like we can come to an agreement on, so that way we're not leaving. I mean, I get it. If I got to be there till 1 a.m, I got to be there till 1 a.m, but are we really getting things like what are we really getting done? Because for me, being a city councilor is not just sitting in that room, right? For me, being a city councilor is actually community organizing too at the same time, being out in the street, being out in the community. So I need time for that too, right? Not just sitting in this space, listening to some people sometimes talk in circles. Kevin, I have to admit, when you come and you rant for a very long time, you do produce a lot of information. I have to give that. But ultimately, that's not always the case. That's not always the case with everyone. And for me, it's like, how do we get the most valuable, pertinent information from the counselors that want to give it to us, so that way we can all make the best decisions or most educated decisions to better serve the people in a timely fashion. If people don't agree, oh well, it is what it is. I guess I'm new and I got time to get on the council so that my words can matter. When I get my 13th season in, then maybe my words will matter more.
Thank you, thank you, Councilor Rivera. Before recognizing other councilors, I mean, the thought that I'm having right now is there are certain sections of the agenda that we can limit. Like, for example, or I feel we can limit the motions, orders, resolutions that are supposed to be referred to committee. That's not a point to have long conversations. And the petitions, like all the things that need to be referred to committee at the meeting, we should not be discussing that, or at least maxing 30 seconds in those sections. And I do agree that we do have the system right now where it's you only got 2 chances to speak. There's a third time, so that can help with that. But I mean, we're bringing up a lot of good points. It's like, I know we've been pretty good at getting out by like 10:45-ish, but there have been meetings that run really, really long. And one thing that I see around the chambers when we're here past 10 o'clock is dozing off, yawning, being tired. Like, what kind of actual real good decisions are we making when we're half asleep? Like, I've seen people that actually dozed off. So those are just things to consider. Councilor Bacon, then Councilor Murphy-Romboletti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the point that I would like to make is that our subcommittees are recommending committees to the council. Most of them consist of 3 out of 13 members. 3 of them consist of 5. Tonight, the attendance has been varied from high to getting lower. Many committees have very small attendance from other counselors, and you can make whatever judgment about that you want. However, all of us who ran for city council, if you didn't know how long the meetings were before you ran, then you weren't really paying attention when you got in the race. I will not support any rule that limits the amount of time a person can speak on an issue. We all know that on our city council, we have 1 or 2 or 3 members who tend to speak longer on matters. We have others who tend to be quite brief, and we have others that tend to be more quiet and cast their votes after they've heard what they wish to hear. we are all elected based on what our constituents see when they decide to go and cast their votes. But I will say that at the council meeting is where the decisions are made. The committees, you can say, well, the committee had the meeting. Yes, it did. And some of the committee meetings can be very confusing because they go back and forth. There's drafts, there's this variation, that variation. If somebody saw one meeting but they didn't see the other two, they're as lost trying to watch those meetings as if they tune into the city council meeting. So I think it's critical at the city council meeting, and that's where most of our constituents tune in, that there is a full airing. I mean, I keep hearing in every meeting I've been in lately, transparency, transparency. Transparency is letting people speak, whether you like what you're hearing them say or not. And trust me, I've listened to a lot of speech I didn't like over the years, as I'm sure other counselors could say the same. But we're not there to like everything that we hear. We're there to put the points out to serve the public's interest. And for the people who are saying we should be talking less and hearing from the public more, we are their representative. That's why they elected us. They shouldn't have to come down to the city council to make sure we do our job. They're coming down to voice a particular opinion on something. But that isn't supposed to be a substitution for us talking to our constituents and representing their interests at council. So I would not be supportive of any time limits. I do think the rule that we have that if somebody has spoken twice on a matter, the body has to approve a third opportunity to speak, accomplishes that. Do some people repeat themselves when they speak? Well, yes, but there's a lot more than one. So I really object to people naming names when we're discussing issues. It really personalizes and divides our discussion, and we should just keep it to the issues. And I will stand on free speech, debate, all day long, because that's why we're elected. And if you can't stay at the meeting because they're too long, well, that's what you signed up for. Thank you.
Councilor Murphy-Rambility.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try to keep this brief, ironically, for like the sake of brevity. But I also just feel like I have to say something, because to argue that the maker of the order was filing this because they are against free speech, or if you're in favor of this rule, that means that you must be against free speech, or one or the other. The world is not black and white. The city council is not either. And so I think I would just like to commend the counselor, the maker of the order, for filing this, because it's allowing us to have a conversation about a really important part of this council. It was noted that, democracy we can't let things get in the way of democracy. I agree. I think everyone here ran for office. We all knew what we were signing up for. I don't love how long these meetings go, but I knew what I was signing up for. But democracy also should not get in the way of civic engagement. And what I have heard from a lot of people, and I door knocked on close to 2,000 doors. And one of the things that gets in the way of people watching these meetings is that they go until 11, 11:30, 11:45. I've been watching these council meetings since 2012. And the amount of times I've turned off a council meeting because it was just going on too long. I'm not alone in that decision. So I really don't appreciate the fact that those who may possibly be in favor of some variation of this rule are being accused of wanting to stifle people from having their opinions. It is. I am speaking on behalf of this because I have heard residents, people who I have no idea of whether or not they voted for me. I heard them say, I would love to watch the council meetings. I start at 7 o'clock. By the time you guys it's 8:30, 9, 10. I'm not watching anymore. How does that do us any kind of service if people are tuning out? And I know folks say, yes, I get it. People tune in on Tuesday nights, but you'd be surprised how many people tune in to other meetings. Now, that being said, no one is saying that we're being punished for working too hard. I personally would love to just see a little bit less grandstanding. If someone has made an opinion that you agree with, great, that's fantastic. Vote in favor of it. Vote against it. We don't need to hear from a bunch of counselors the same thing every time. So really, and one other thing, I won't call any counselors out because I'm really not trying to, but someone this evening said that we should be sticking to the topic. Maybe that's what we should be having a conversation on. Because that right there, in my opinion, I've only been on the council for 2 months. I recognize that I have a lot to learn. Great. But what I've seen is that we do not stay on topic. And that's not the president's fault. That's something that we as counselors should also recognize. We're all grown adults. Is what I'm saying relevant to the order that is on the agenda? Is what I'm saying relevant to the discussion that is happening right now? If it's not, when else can I say this? Is a committee better? Should I file a different order? I think we all as counselors need to hold ourselves responsible to stay on topic. So all of that being said, I don't know. I personally, as much as I respect the intent of this order, it doesn't make me a bad person or someone who's against public speech. I probably won't vote for it because I think it's too specific and it's not really enforceable. But I just felt like that was really necessary to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to be funny, but I just timed everybody. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not to be funny, but I just timed everybody, and I realize that the intent of the order is about limiting the debate time and discussion time on the full city council and not the committee time. But if you just listened or just heard some of this evening for a reason, not to be funny, Tessa, you just won. You beat Councilor Jordan, who spoke for 5 minutes and 18 seconds.
Holy moly.
You weren't even close to him at 2 minutes and 55 seconds.
Yeah.
You spoke for another 4 minutes the second time.
Amazing.
Okay. The chairman was in the lead until he
love it.
spoke for a second time, and he's now in second place. The winner is Councilor Givner, who spoke for 1 minute and 52 seconds and .03 and made her concise points. But that's not why, again, and I could go through everybody. It's not, the point isn't that we all like to talk. I guess the point is we need to talk, but what a lot of us have forgotten, we need to listen. There's 13 of us, and every one of the 13 elected officials should have a right to speak as concise and articulate as they can, and to be able to rebut when other people, one of my pet peeves, put words in our mouths. And that is time consuming, and I understand that. But what I'd really like to talk about is, Mr. Chairman, and each of us, chair committees, we have to make a report of what took place in our committee. We may not agree with everything that's said in the committee, but each individual that spoke in the committee and took the time to participate in the discussion at the committee level is part of the committee report. Not necessarily part of the debate, but part of the committee report. We're not just reporting when it comes out of committee to 12 other city councilors. We're reporting to the public.
Right.
And that's our responsibility. Sometimes we legally have to justify the vote of the committee in a zone change petition. We have to justify the way we vote on the floor by what is presented in debate. And you just can't do a lot of that in 60 seconds on the most important things. Do I think, I repeat myself, I do. And I'm sorry, that's the nature of who I am, but I sometimes don't have that confidence that I said it right the first time, and I'll say it again. But we've talked about time constraints a lot. The rule we came up with is, all right, if you're gonna speak a third time, you're really testing it, get permission. So I just advise the committee, and when we come to the full city council level, is people need to learn how to listen a little bit better, be a little bit more concise, and I'm going to stop right there because I didn't win, Tessa, but I came.
Gonna break the
I'm in
record.
4th place.
I love it. I love the transparency, Joe.
Councilor Givner. Thank you, Councilor McGivern and Councilor Givner.
And I should say, Councilor McGee has actually won the whole thing because he hasn't said a word yet.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention that the intention with the order was not to limit the committee reports. I think the committee reports are of utmost importance, so I just wanted to put that out there. And also, I think it's unfortunate that this was taken personally because it wasn't intended to be personal. I don't think that I'm trying to limit our messages. I just really feel that I think Councilor McGivern said it really well that, I think it's important to be clear and concise, and I think that helps the voting public and those who are tuning in. I've also heard from many constituents that they tune out because the meetings are too long. So I do really think that if the purpose of the main city council meeting is to vote, to reach constituents, to share a message, that it doesn't really serve its purpose in that way. So I think that getting clarifications, again, the intention with the order and the timing may not be the best, the wording might not be the best, but I think the message is getting, if we were talking in the main city council, getting clarifications from one another about things that are being voted on, about things coming down the line, I think that helps others, constituents understand what we're trying to vote on and what we're actually talking about. I think sometimes our messages get lost, unfortunately, and it starts to sound a little repetitive. So I'm not trying to limit free speech by any means. I think it's really important, but I also think it's important that we get our message across in a more clear and concise way, and are available for people who are awake during our working hours. I of course know what I signed up for. I don't have a problem staying up all night if needed, but I just don't think it's always super productive. So I appreciate this discussion and everyone's input because it wasn't meant to be personal. I'm German. I grew up German. Things run on time. That's what I'm used to. People are clear. Everything's black and white. There's no gray area in Germany. So what can I say? I appreciate everyone and all of your patience with this order, and any rewording that could help make it any way possible, I also appreciate.
Thank you, Councilor Givner. Councilor Anderson Burgos.
Wow. I might win at this one. Give me a second. No, listen, I heard everybody. Everybody made good points. And I see where people would get personal, take it to the personal level. And I got a little angry because Izzy stole my thunder when I was going to actually mention about democracy and silencing and when we silence our constituents. And then there was points that were made in regards to, well, we are the voices of our constituents, right? But the thing is, the truth of the matter is, we are 13 voices, but the city of Holyoke is over 40,000 voices. And so I gotta remember, not everybody in my ward voted for me. Not everybody in the city voted for every at-large. I just think, does this make sense? It does. Because what happens is when we're having discussion, which is a good thing, when we're having healthy discussions, not that we need to agree, right? But when we're having healthy discussions, that it is in a timely manner. And the reason for that, especially during committee, is that when we invite department heads, let's face the facts that these department heads reach out to us. Can you please take me first? Because they don't want to sit there. They don't want to sit there. They worked all day in their department all day to sit in a city council and watch us take stabs at each other. And I think what Councillor Givner was trying to do was not trying to point fingers or whatever. Is just to keep the traffic, the conversation at a normal pace, at a regular pace, at an adjusted pace that it's not feeling like overwhelming. And I think, those are the points I want to make. I respect everybody. You guys all made good points. I respect you all. But hopefully, what am I? Number three, Councilor McGivern, you've been keeping a tally, so I just want to make
You're
sure.
actually in the middle of the pack, Councilor Anderson Burgos. You're doing fine.
And I'm done. And I'm done. Thank you so much.
Stop.
Love you all.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson Burgos. Councilor Jordan.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, again, everybody made good points. Just a couple things. One is, I think there's really only like 2 or 3 issues at any one of these full council meetings that gets extensive deliberation. We probably have 60, 70 items on the agenda perhaps, and maybe 2 or 3 of them, like, for example, the 475 at the last meeting would get this type of thing where people might feel that, we had a lot of discussion, but, it's a big, big topic, right? So that's where the discussion is going to be. I would be careful opining too much about what other people have to say or who they are and that type of thing, and being very judgmental about the way other people conduct themselves as a counselor, in my opinion, because your view of what's grandstanding is probably because you don't agree with that person's view. I view it as people have different opinions than me, and I say that's their truth, and that's what they were elected to tell the public, right? That's what's in their heart, and that's their conscience. So that's what they should say. I'll do my best to try and persuade people to my point of view on some of these controversial topics, but maybe I'm not even speaking to you. Maybe I'm just speaking to the constituents directly. Debate isn't always about trying to convince our colleagues, but it's about trying to persuade a public opinion on a certain issue. And we should have the right to do that. That's really important. Now, if we want to talk about changing the public comment rules, yeah, if we think that, I'll say this, it was when I became council president worked with Councilor Aaron Vega at the time that we even created a public comment. There used to be no public comment at all at city council meetings. That's not around that long. That only started in like 2012. So in terms of the long history of the city council, if we want to revisit that and have longer time for public comment, that would be a separate order. But we were elected, and I can tell you, I speak to constituents, a lot of them, and they tell me, boy, I'm really glad you're there. I'm really glad you say things that we don't otherwise hear. You give the other side of the story often. You give another perspective. It's no longer an echo chamber. I hear those type of comments. I hear people say, I don't agree with what you have to say, but boy, I'm sure glad you said it. It gave me something to think about. So that's not that I'm any barometer to measure it by, but I'm just saying that is quote unquote advancing the discussion. I agree. If the discussion here is people should be concise and to the point, absolutely, we're unanimous in that opinion. If we think people should be advancing the discussion and staying on topic, absolutely, totally agree. But to just put an artificial limit on some of these extremely complex, in-depth discussions about spending $74 million or doing XYZ, that doesn't all happen in 60 seconds or even 3 minutes. And I'm just telling you, the city council and the public will be cheated out of that type of dialogue if we do that. And the ultimate is if people don't think we're doing a good job, they will vote us out. If they think we're doing a good job, they will reelect us. So take that as your public opinion poll, not anecdotal from, well, so-and-so told me, or Joe Blow, I knocked on some guy's door and he said X. Take a look at who keeps getting reelected, who doesn't keep getting reelected, and take that as some barometer that there are every 2 years an objective measure of who and why we should have in those discussions that should be there on the city council. We're all offering a perspective. Some people have, and I totally agree, Councilor Rivera made a different, I thought a good point. Everybody of the 13 of us brings a different style to the council. Some people believe, it's in the meetings. Some people have it on constituent service. Some people call it community organizing. Some people are quiet. They don't like to talk a lot. Some people have a lot to say on some of these things. Nobody's style is one way better or the other. Just be careful being too judgmental about other people's styles, in my opinion. And these rules, they kind of really are judgmental, in my opinion, because they're very limiting to how people want to bring facts and discussions into it. But if people start talking way off on totally crazy topics, then the president should gavel them in. I'm totally in support of that. So I'll leave it at that. And I just think if we want to reorient the conversation, we can do that. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan.
King just won.
Yep.
Oh, there we go.
McGivern just announced.
Sorry,
the winner.
Tessa. I'm back in first.
That's all right. That's all right. Someone's got to do it.
I also want to thank Councilor Gibner for putting in this order, even though I think we all had good points to make. I think the discussion is needed, and I think a lot of the intention of the message behind the order I think was received. So yeah, let's just make things work better, smoothly, and more efficiently. I'd like to entertain a motion. Oh, sorry, Councilor McGee.
I heard everything that everyone said. And how many seconds? No, just kidding. I make a motion that's complied with.
Motion that it is complied with.
Second.
Second.
We have a new winner.
All
Councilor
agreed?
D.
He wins.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed? So complied with.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
See you, everybody.